Welcome, Emma. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm good. I'm good.
To kick things off, actually, let me introduce Wolff Olins properly. I believe there is no one here who doesn't know what Wolff Olins is, but just in case there are some, obviously Wolff Olins is an amazing branding agency, known worldwide. Been doing design work for over 60 years now, I think, founded by the brilliant Michael Wolff, our very good friend. He started it together with Wolff Olins in 1965, I believe. And you guys done a lot of fantastic design work. Obviously, no need to mention the very, very famous projects. But personally, I think for me, a couple of key projects that I remember resonated with me ages ago. I remember when AOL came out, that was like such a big deal. It was discussed a lot. I remember this project because it was using sound to generate branding again. It was such a groundbreaking project to use sound as part of the generative brand identity again. That was very, very different approach. Obviously, you've done a lot of work with modern companies like Treatwell and Google and all of those. So I suppose Wolff Olins stands for branding and stood for branding for quite a while now. And I'm excited to have you, Emma, today because you lead the design studio in London. So on one hand, you are a creative director who needs to think about creative direction and all things design. But on the other hand, you are a design leader who needs to look after the team and run the studio and all sorts of things that are very, very complicated on top of any job. So I'm really excited to talk to you today about all the challenges and how you overcome them and how can we learn from all of this. But let me start with 10 rapid fire questions. Okay. That very, very simple and hopefully will tell a bit more about you. First question, are you a morning or a night person?
Oh, a night person. Yeah, I'm a night owl. If I had my way, I would sleep in and work all night long.
Oh, same here. Glad we're on the same page. Describe yourself in 3 words.
Mouthy, northern, stubborn.
I love it. It's a good choice of 3 words. How do you take your coffee?
Black.
Good. Like a espresso or just like a black Americano?
Black Americano. But I'm also,
Nice.
I'm a little bit OCD. I'm probably more of a brew person, so a cup of tea. And that's the first drink I've got to have of the day. And then it's coffee, black.
Nice. Oh, good. What is one thing that annoys you the most?
People eating with their mouth open. It's like my pet hate. Like, hate it. And to the point where I'll say something if someone's near me when they're doing it.
Oh my gosh, this is hilarious. What's your favorite book?
The China Study. Like, anyone who would see this, I don't know if anyone knows it, but anyone who would see this, it looks like a science journal. But I'm massively into nutrition. My dad died at a young age. I kind of wanted to learn a lot, and it was for health reasons, and I wanted to learn a lot more about my health and what I was putting in my body. So I read this book, and it completely changed my view of food and what I was fueling myself with. So that's my Bible. I return to that over and over again, and I buy it everybody for Christmas and birthdays. I don't think they want to read it. It's not the most glamorous looking book, but it's definitely.
What's the name of the book?
The China Study.
Okay,
it looks like a science journal. It's not the most exciting read, but it's informative.
Amazing. Oh, that's something different. Never been recommended a science book, so that's really good. Achievement you are the most proud of?
If I was pleasing people, I would say my daughter, and it's like the most amazing thing. She's great and I love her. But if I'm being quite selfish, I'm proud that I went to uni. And I say that because none of my family is educated. None of my family even went to college because they couldn't afford it. So getting through university and getting a degree is a big thing for me.
We'll talk more about that. That is a fascinating subject, and your whole career and journey, I think, is just, you can write a book about it. So looking forward to diving deeper into that. Designer or artist you discovered recently?
Rediscovered recently. You know what? I can't think of any. I wouldn't say that I rediscovered them, but I've always had a soft spot for Noma Bars, who does the Guardian illustrations, where you see things on 2 levels. So it's not about rediscovering, but I've always been a fan of him.
Oh, amazing. What did you want to be when you were growing up?
I wanted to be a soldier. No,
Oh,
no,
wow.
actually, no. I'll tell a lie. I wanted to be a soldier until I realised you could have a career in the arts, and then I wanted to be an animator.
Wow, that is a big leap, and that's also another point of conversation. Okay, I have the last question for you. What is the best part about working in branding?
Getting paid to be creative, and getting to work alongside other creatives. And it's not a 9 to 5 job. Yeah, getting paid to use a talent that you have and that you enjoy doing it. So it doesn't feel like a job.
Love to hear that. And we clearly can see that the work that you do definitely comes from the heart and with all the passion. So that's amazing to hear. So we're done with rapid fire questions, so we can slow down now and talk more about all the intricate parts of your life. And starting with, could you tell more a bit about the beginning of your journey? Where did you grow up? What was your family like? And when did you discover that you actually want to do something creative?
Yeah, sure. I probably don't sound it because I've been down here for quite a while. But I'm from Salford. I'm from a council estate in Salford. And I'm very, very proud of that fact. And growing up on a council estate, like, everybody I knew, including my family, either didn't have jobs or kind of worked in labour. So I wasn't really aware that you could have a career in the arts. And but I was super creative as a kid. Like, I loved being by myself, and I loved making stuff. And I couldn't afford the toys that I would see on TV, so I would recreate them. And in my head, they were like fucking amazing, but I bet they were shit, because I would take crisp boxes and build mansions or build cars or build airplanes, and I was just in my absolute element. And I guess all the way through school as well, I kind of went to a rough school, so kind of being like doing art and having a career in art wasn't encouraged. So I still didn't realize that you could make like money out of it. And I remember my career advisor, when they were like, "Oh, what do you want to do? What are you good at?" And I was like, "Oh, I like art. I'm really interested in art." And the recommendation for me at the time was to be a window dresser, because they didn't know what a graphic designer was. And I guess it wasn't until I graduated, so I left school, and I was like, shit, what am I going to do with myself? I'm really good at drawing, and I kind of want to carry on. And I can't quite remember how I kind of made the leap to uni, kind of what the trigger was. But I wanted to be an animator. I didn't want to be a graphic designer because I didn't know what that was. I would spend my Saturdays watching cartoons, watching Dungeons and Dragons, and I loved the fact that these characters would come alive and you'd create these imaginary worlds. And I was like, I want to do that. So I think I must have read an animation book and realized you could make a career out of this. But the only option I had was to do a degree that did graphic design as well. So it was almost like a side bit to my course. And, it turns out that I was pretty good at it, and I got to do both. And that passion for motion and animation has always been there throughout my career. And I credit that for probably helping me get into the places I might not have got into because I had that additional skill.
Amazing. And what happened then? So you thought you wanted to be an animator, you went to study graphic design. How did that then?
So I graduated, and then I went to, and this makes me sound incredibly arrogant, but I kind of went to Pentagram and then dropped out because I thought it kind of wasn't really for me. I didn't really enjoy it. Pentagram's an awesome company, but it was more that I felt restricted, and I was still chasing this hunger to do motion and to do animation. So then I went back and did a year's course in animation, 2D animation at the time. Like 3D wasn't really a thing. Like Toy Story had just come out. That's that kind of indicator of how old I am. And then I've had a really unconventional career. So I kind of worked for a while being an illustrator and doing some animation as well. And then the desire for branding and graphics, because I'd spent so long training to do that, started to kick in. So then I I then moved to Saatchi, spent some time at Saatchi, built up some experience in advertising. Then I went to Moving Brands and spent a lot of time, and they really honed my skills in branding. And it was a completely different experience for early on in my career. And I guess that ignited my passion again for motion. And then from there, I kind of went on to Wolff Olins London, and then eventually ended up at Wolff Olins. So completely unconventional. And the whole time I was battling, like, do I want to be a graphic designer? Do I want to be an animator? Do I want to be an illustrator? And in the end, like, and I remember as well, I remember going to recruiters when I first came to London and showing them my book, and they were like, what am I going to do with you? What, I don't even know what you are. And I guess at the time I was a hybrid. I look for that quality now in designers, but to anyone looking at that, I probably look like a confusing mess, and you couldn't put me in a box, because at the time designers were kind of popped into boxes.
That is an amazing story, and I can so relate to your thoughts around who I am, who am I, and which career path should I take, because it was very similar for me. Like when I was studying design, I also didn't know, first of all, that branding is a thing. For me, it was advertising. I thought advertising is something that I saw there are jobs there. People make money with advertising, and it sounded very glamorous to do commercials. So I also moved around kind of those areas. And yeah, you're right. When you show your portfolio, that kind of consists of partially advertising, partially graphic design, partially illustration in my case. And yeah. I suppose in your case, there was animations as well. That confuses everyone. And like, please pick one path you like to take. Don't confuse the recruiter.
Yeah.
It's very, very hard. And I feel like it did change now. And now you look for those people who at least try different things. Even if they do one thing, they kind of curious about different parts of design and creativity.
Yeah. And at the time, it's soul destroying. I mean, you know, any creative is kind of, whenever they're designing, they're putting a piece of themselves kind of out there for people to criticize. And to be a young designer going to the recruitment agency saying, look, am I good enough? Please accept me. And then to kind of be told like, nah, you're not what we're looking for. It kind of really knocks your confidence. And, you know, you're made to believe that there's something wrong with you, or that you're not good enough. You're just, you know, ahead of your time almost. Or you just don't fit the mold, and, you know, that should be celebrated instead of, you know, kind of criticized. And I think it is. I think that it's completely shifted to what it was like 15 years ago.
Great. So then after all these different wonderful jobs and experiences from Pentagram to Saatchi, you end up at Wolff Olins.
Yeah.
Do you remember, first of all, what was your kind of interview process, and when you got the job, like what were your feelings? And then the first day when you officially arrived to Wolff Olins, what was going on in your head? Were you happy, excited, scared?
Yeah. I'll be honest, like Wolff Olins is freaking hard to get in. I remember it was like breaking into a prison. I had I had like three rounds of interviews, and I think they also kind of wanted to do a workshop with me, where I would kind of run a team, and we often do that to see what how new employees fit with the other communities. Like Wolff Olins is divided into design community, strategy community, and program director community, and we all work really, really tightly. And I know a lot of agencies don't have that, so we do these workshops. And we invite those individuals from those other teams to kind of come and grill you. And I remember at the time, like on my interview, I think it might have been my second one, and there was one of the program directors who, you know, was actually super lovely and still there. But I remember at the time thinking, what are you doing? Why are you grilling me? Why are you like talking to me? You're not a creative. And it was just because I wasn't used to that, because that you know, I didn't come from that background. The program directors sat a floor above, and you never interacted with them. But I remember thinking it was super tough, and I was just kind of grateful at the time. I was like, even if I got in the door, so I could take some photographs and tell my friends that I'd been into Wolff Olins. So that was hard, and that's why I'm appreciated now. When I always try and be over friendly when I'm interviewing somebody, because having been through that experience, I know how fucking intimidating it is, and maybe you catch people off guard and that they're not giving you their best. And then I remember like my first day, I shit myself. But I do remember, and I mean this in the nicest possible way, but I remember thinking, oh my God, this place is a cult. And I mean that lovely because, and I really do mean that in the nicest possible way, because there is such a strong family feel at Wolff Olins that I had never experienced. And I'm not saying that because I hate cheesy shit, but it's true. And I watched people for the first week kind of being celebrated. People were clapping people's achievements in front of the whole company, and people sat down and had their dinner together. There was these massive communal spaces where people kind of just hung out, and it felt like somebody's kitchen, almost like on a massive scale. So that was really lovely. I really liked that aspect, that it was this family, and we do pride ourselves on that even to this day. I'd heard about it. It's legendary that Wolff Olins had this chef that used to cook for people, and everybody would sit down together at lunch and to kind of be there and witness it. It's something special, but it does throw you at first because you're just not used to it. But it was a lovely, warm feeling. But I also remember being intimidated. Like, oh my God, like the people at Wolff, they're so smart. They are top of their game. And I remember just being terrified of talking to Brian, who was our chairman, and I would go the other way if I saw him coming, because I thought, I'm just going to think of something smart to say. And if I ever saw him coming, I'd kind of leg it the other way. But you kind of realize, and this is a common theme, like when everyone starts at Wolff Olins, everyone's like, oh my God, everyone's really, really smart, but they're also really friendly, like super friendly, and everybody's kind of willing to help and share their knowledge, because, you know, we are a family and we look out for each other.
Amazing. And definitely the kind of the culture of Wolff Olins is something that is known. And if anyone hasn't seen the interview we had with Michael Wolff about how he built that from the beginning and why he hired a chef to actually cook for people, check out our YouTube channel, Future London Academy, and it's brilliant. And Michael, I think it's just such a lovely person that you can feel his part of his soul and his heart still at Wolff Olins, which is fantastic and very rare for companies of that size.
Yeah. No, so just on that point, on the size point, it's true. You know, we're a big agency, even though we've kind of shrunk over the years. We're still big by agency standards, and people are always surprised that we don't have that big agency cog feel, because we don't have hierarchy, we don't have boundaries in our place. It's probably got the feeling of a studio that's got 10 people in it, which again is rare. It's very rare for big agencies. And having worked at big agencies, it is something special.
So you joined Wolff Olins as a creative director?
No, I actually joined as a DD. I was a creative director previously. Mm-hmm. And what Wolff tend to do is bring people down a level, and that's because it's to protect the individual. Mm-hmm. And I honestly, I genuinely appreciate the fact that they did that, because I would have sank if I was had I come in as a CD, because the expectations of a CD at Wolff Olins were nothing like what I'd experienced previously. What they were doing, they were easing me in, getting me used to the clients. I previously, one thing that differentiates from when I've worked at other agencies at Wolff Olins, you're in the boardroom with the C-suite. I was not used to that previously. Previously, it kind of been middle management, and the size of the teams that I was used to, and the size of the clients and the kind of budgets that we were playing with, they were just way over my head. So it was to protect me and to ease me in until I felt comfortable. And that took however long, 6 months, I think it was. And we do that at all levels as well. We do that. We drop people, people might be senior designers elsewhere, and we'll bring them in as designers, where we get them used to being at Wolff, because, we can't hold people's hands, because we're high performing. We expect the best all the time. So it's to help the individual.
And you mentioned expectations, that there are high expectations from a creative director. What are those expectations? What do you expect from a great creative director? What do you feel like was expected from you that maybe you were not used to before?
Honesty. I think it has been an expectation, especially from my team. I can only speak from the design community that I hadn't maybe seen a lot. And that makes it sound really cynical, and I kind of don't mean that, but maybe you're sheltered away from stuff. But I've kind of taken the approach in my team, having listened to them, and where I'm quite open about what I expect from from them in terms of standard, what the business kind of expects from them, when stuff isn't good enough, and also kind of the state of the business and the industry. So I think honesty and openness, as well as pushing the work, setting boundaries. I've worked at agencies previously where the creative directors, maybe they were more hands off and they were kind of more involved in kind of their projects, whereas kind of like here the expectation as a creative director is you push the boundaries, whether that be your projects or someone else's, but anything that goes out the door with Wolff Olins' name in it, is expected to be of the standard that we expect.
I mean, it sounds hard, and I can only imagine what kind of thoughts you had during your first 6 months, and how much you learned during that time as well, because thrown into a new environment with very high expectations, it kind of, your learning curves goes up. And actually, you will be teaching on our executive program for design leaders that is inspired by Bauhaus. And you will be, part of this program is about leadership and being a great design leader. And what does it mean to be a great leader? Because again, we live in a very, very interesting world right now where design has more value, design has more voice. So how can we all be better design leaders? So it would be very interesting to hear what were some of the learnings that you got throughout these years of being on Wolff Olins. What does it mean to be a great design leader, or a leader of all sorts, to be honest?
It's bloody hard. And whether that be at Wolff Olins or anywhere else, it's hard. I was like a hungry designer, wanted to be a director so quickly, and my team is super ambitious and they want to be it as well. And so I was biting at the bit, but it's hard. And that's because, for several reasons, there's no rule book. There's nobody telling you, how to be a great design leader, and it kind of differs from each studio and from each team and with each individual. And I think it's fair to say that our industry is shit at mentoring, or at least I've not seen great examples of mentoring. So I've always kind of been mindful of that and tried to make sure I give back kind of what I didn't have, and I was looking for nurturing and looking for guidance. So to that point, that it's hard and there's no rule book, and and I've also learned this, and this is a touchy subject for some people, but the rules are different for females. And I say that because there was people listening, and there were females listening, and I kind of want them, as they come up through the ranks, to kind of know it isn't all roses. That I see how different this is no company in particular, but just as the industry as a whole. I kind of witness how female leaders are treated differently to male leaders. Throughout my career, and it's part of this is because I'm Northern and because I'm direct, but I often get labelled aggressive or confrontational or argumentative. Yet I watch my male counterparts pick fights. I watch them make grown men cry. I watch them throw equipment, and yet they're labelled passionate. And so the hard thing for me has been getting to grips with the double standards that I see in the industry. And also, this is not a sub story, but I guess for anyone thinking of coming out to a leader, and you want to hear the truth, is that it's lonely. Like it's really lonely in the sense that you get used to being part of the team. This is the biggest shift for me, was going from the DD to the CD. You get used to being part of the team. You're kind of hands-on. You're one of the gang, and then suddenly you switch to overseeing the team. And it's not my words, but you see that you go from being one of them to being in the boss mode, and you notice that the invites down the pub kind of drop off, and you've got to be thick-skinned about that. So, but that doesn't mean all the positives kind of outweigh that. But it's different. It's completely different from when you're on the tools and you're a designer. And also, nobody teaches you, because you spend your entire career, you spend your degree learning how to be a designer, learning how to create logos, learning how to lay stuff out, learning about hierarchy. And then you get taught by your senior designer how to do things a great way. And then you get taught how to be a DD and how to kind of push clients. But nobody teaches you how to manage people. It's just something that you kind of expected to know. And, I don't know if creatives make great leaders, great managers, because, there's not many books on this. So that's a bit of a head fuck as well. Sorry about my language. Really well.
Not to worry. I don't think kids are watching us, I have to say. But thanks for sharing your frustration. I so agree with you, and definitely kind of relate to your point about managing the team and kind of feeling lonely and feeling like you always learn from someone. You always had someone to look up to and ask a question, and suddenly you're the one that everyone asks the question. So you need to know all the answers, or at least find out where to point people to, which is very hard. And definitely the kind of the feeling that you're not part of the team potentially anymore, because people are a bit more worried what they're going to say and how you're going to react to that. So are there any tips or anything particular that you learned around how to be a better manager that surprised you, like from like the point that you started, maybe mistakes that you made that you learned from that now help you to be a better team manager?
I think back in the early days, because I was so used to being hands-on and maybe not great at articulating myself, I would find that I would just be like, oh, you know what, I'll just get on and I'll do it myself. And now I realize the damage that causes, that it kind of demotivates the team, and it kind of also highlights that I'm not a great director, because I should be able to articulate what the problem is for my designers to be able to understand that. And by jumping on the tools and just doing it for them, they're not learning, and neither am I learning. It's more than anything, it's probably highlighting my faults or my weaknesses at the time of being a director. So I guess giving my team space, giving them and not micromanaging them, which is probably what I was doing in the early days. So giving them space to kind of to grow and to make mistakes, because that's how people learn, and that's how we challenge. So the space thing was probably the biggest. Don't micromanage.
Yeah, I agree. It is the hardest, because especially for creative people who went into creative industry to do things. So I definitely felt that, and kind of had a bit of an identity crisis, I suppose, when you stop being hands-on part of the project, and then can you even call this project yours if you actually didn't do any design?
Yeah.
And then, so.
And I still do that now. I still struggle, like when you're not the one hands-on doing it, then kind of people like not that you take credit for it, but because you have the more senior title, it just makes you feel awkward when you think, well, I can actually physically design that thing. But then I have to kind of get my head around the fact that, yes, but I'm leading the charge. I'm setting the vision. I'm setting the standards. I'm enabling the conditions for that team to be able to do that. So, and that, and I think a lot of directors kind of go through that, where they have this identity crisis, and there's a kind of a terminology for it, isn't it? Where like imposter syndrome. I'm all the time kind of battling that, thinking, am I really cut out for this? Like, oh, and then I just think, yes, you bloody well are. Yes, you've earned your place in doing it. And, my role is just different. I think that's what it is. Your role just shifts. Design isn't a one person job. It's a team, and that's not just the creatives as well. And I kind of been on the learning journey as well. Again, I was probably a little bit of a shit and a bit arrogant when I started out, but learning that creatives can't do their job if they don't have the framework around them. So they need to partner with their strategists. When I was younger, I was like, why are you guys even kind of stepping on our turf? We're the one who kind of do the design. Back off. And now it's just like this, it's fantastic that you have these incredible strategic brains who strengthen your thinking. And for me personally, with dyslexia, they're like a bloody godsend. And then your program directors who kind of continuously push and challenge you without, because they got their client head on, challenging you that your work is good enough. Because otherwise, sometimes as a designer, you kind of go into design mode. So I'm kind of want something beautiful for myself, and they kind of pull you out and like remind you that it's a client that's paying for this. So yeah, it's a team.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And you just mentioned dyslexia, and I think that's one more obstacle in your already very tough journey. that you had to overcome. And I suppose, as with anything that happens and anything that you have as a given, there are bad sides and there are good sides. And obviously communicating yourself with dyslexia is much more challenging. So could you tell a bit more, how does it feel and how did you overcome that as well? So if anyone listening to us has dyslexia or actually has any other situation, like in my example, English is not my native language. So communication was always part of my day-to-day challenge. So any advice that you learned from your dyslexia that could help?
I mean, first of all, if there is anybody listening with dyslexia or a learning disability that's similar, don't be ashamed of it. Don't hide it. For so long in my career, I didn't tell people because I believed it would hold me back. And, I heard the stories where, the jokes aside, you can't spell or you can't read, and people assume that that those issues are associated with people not being very bright. And, in actual fact, is bullshit. It actually isn't that. Dyslexics' brains are hardwired to see the world differently and to input and output differently. And that's a superpower. And you'll find that with my dyslexia, I'm a lot more visual in the way that I think. I'm terrified of words. I kind of got a lot better over time, and I put a massive, thank you to the strategists that I work with, and also to my husband who helps. But I hate words, so my way around that is, first of all, I don't hide the fact that I have it. I'm quite open about it. I make sure that I get briefs or presentations a whole day before anybody else, because it takes me 6 or 7 times to read the content. I'll find that if I can't articulate what I need to in words, then I've got a strategist or a copywriter who can craft that. And if not, and if I don't have them, then I'm sorry, but pictures are just going to have to do. I'm a creative, so that's how I need to articulate myself. So I guess the advice I'm giving you is, don't try and fit the mold. Do what you need to do to be able to get the best out of yourself. Work the way that you need to, because we're all different, and that should be celebrated. We say that at Wolff Olins, we have this terminology that we're we're a fruit salad bunch, and everybody's different, and we need to find ways to work with those people who have differences. And another thing I do as well is I work with my headphones on. Because I need absolute silence. I suffer from a visual and an audio distraction. So the headphones are just, I don't even have any music on. They're just a big back off. But I find that helped as well. But get the content before everybody else. So because there's nothing worse, and I guess any designers that are listening, there's nothing worse when you get a brief landed on your desk, and like half an hour later, the program director's like, right, can we go for the brief? And you're like, I don't even understand the words. I need to Google some of this stuff. It's not going in. I'm going to need a little bit longer.
Such a great advice. And I also believe dyslexia is a superpower, especially for creative people, because if I'm not mistaken, it's all about brain wiring, and essentially being creative, it means having the wrong connection. So if all your connections are in order, essentially you can only go certain paths.
Yeah, exactly.
So to be creative, some of your connections needs to be a bit messed up. Whether it means, I, for example, have horrible memory. So instead of always remembering, I have to make up a lot of things in my head. So I think my brain constantly trains itself to just come up with new things. And so dyslexia is very similar, when you have to connect things differently, which is very hard, incredibly hard. And I kind of imagine how mentally draining it is for you to go through these processes, but also understanding that's your superpower and being upfront about it. I think this is so important, such a great advice.
I think you'll find as well, people are really understanding. It's common. It's a lot more common than people realize, and it's really common for some reason amongst creatives. Hopefully I think the worst thing, and I guess for anyone listening, the worst thing for me as a dyslexic is open plan studios. So COVID's been brilliant for me. I've got no distractions. I'm loving it for that reason. My spelling and probably writing is probably increased tenfold.
Yeah, and I also love how you mentioned about including your team to help, whether it's a strategist or copywriter. And I think with anything, whether it's dyslexia or any other things that you are currently not good at or just not planning to be good at, it's always good to build a team that complements those skills and kind of can help you out, because there are people that are brilliant at everything and you're brilliant in one thing, and there will be someone else who loves doing the opposite thing of yours, and then together you can do great things. So it's always finding those people.
Yeah, we kind of echo what happens in the advertising agency, or what used to. You kind of get a great copywriter with a kind of a great like art director, and they kind of marry up and they create like beautiful stuff. Do the same like in your studio. Find someone who's great with words that can help you articulate. So for me, that's our strategists. But there might be other people. There might be kind of program directors. You might have. It might even be another designer who can help you, but find that individual and use them as your partner.
Absolutely, and it also empowers actually a lot of people when they know that you value them for that special something that they have.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. So we talked about a lot of hard things, but one more thing that I wanted to ask you is about the hard days of being a design leader. And to be honest, being a person, a human, you have good days, you have bad days. But when you're in charge of big teams, big budgets, big decisions, there are days that are just the hardest. So do you remember a specific day or moment throughout your career that you felt the lowest, and that was something, either the hard decisions you had to make or situation, whatever that was? And what did you feel? What happened, and how did you get yourself out of there?
Yeah, without a doubt, like this one's an easy one to answer, is letting people go. It's as a leader of the design community at Wolff Olins, you spend time kind of like getting to know your team, and our community is really close. And when any company hits hard times and you have to make the decision to let somebody go, it's like, it's incredibly hard for so many levels. Like, it's incredibly hard because as a person, you can relate to the difficulties that they'll be going through. You're also letting one of the team go, the tight-knit team, and that, it's not just the effect that it has on you or that individual, the effect that it has on the team and the wider business. And then having to deal with the backlash of why you made that decision. It's by far like really, really hard. And I've had to do that several times throughout my career. And I guess a lot of people listening might have had to do that with the current times with COVID. And that's probably the very few times that I get emotional and that I've actually cried. But I have to remind myself in those situations why you're doing them, outside of the fact that it's a wider industry problem. But you have to think what does your team need? What is best for your team? What is best for the business? And stick to your guns on why you made that decision. But it's never nice letting people go.
I agree with you. I think it's because we're all humans at the end of the day. So it's always very hard to detach yourself from the human that is in front of you, who also has lives and stories behind them. And there are so many ways to do it badly, I have to say. There is no way to do it right, but there are many ways to do it badly. Yeah. Anything that you learned of that process, and I know there is no answer, it will never be easy to let someone go, but any extra tips you can give someone who might be still facing kind of that and has to learn how to do that?
Put yourself in their shoes, just like you would if you were designing for your customers or users. When you're delivering that news, think about what you would want to hear, and deliver it that way. So just think how you would want to hear that news, how you would want to be treated.
I want to ask you about your family, which is a very unusual family because you're both creative people together with your husband. And I assume being surrounded by creativity 24 hours a day is also quite a challenge. So how does it work? How do you ever stop working about design and, I don't know, pros and cons, and what does your life look like?
So my husband is also a creative director, and we actually grew up together. So we went to uni, we studied on the same course. So we kind of followed quite a tight path, and we've worked at the same company at different times. So our paths have been pretty close, and it kind of has its pros and cons. You never switch off. So the conversation is always about design. But I don't mind that because, again, I'm a creative. I'm not a 9-to-5 job. So my interests around creativity and design. My house is decorated with pictures that inspire me. My friends are in a similar field. So it kind of only feels natural that we will kind of talk about our work and what we do. Where it gets difficult is my husband's family are also designers, so his siblings are also designers. So that's when it comes a little bit tiring. You go home at Christmas and you're like, oh God, I want a break. And everyone's like, hey, can you give me some portfolio advice? Can you kind of like can you take a look at this work? Can you give me some advice here? And it's like, can you get me a job? That's pretty hard. But it's the positives massively outweigh the negative. And having what we do means that we don't switch off sometimes, and we can't work regular hours. And sometimes you might have a creative block throughout the day and you haven't nailed it, so you have to work into the evening because you want to, or you maybe you're on a roll and you don't want to stop, and you sometimes need to work weekends because your mind just can't switch off. And I guess having a husband who understands that, is a massive help. Because I imagine if you weren't in this industry and you were trying to explain to somebody like, what, you don't get paid for this and you're still doing it? Are you crazy? So it's massively, massively helpful. And he's great as well. And, I talked before, I'm kind of glad he's not listening because he'll probably be loving this. But I kind of did talk before about not really having a mentor, not really having anyone who guided and nurtured me. And my husband has been fantastic at doing that. He's the one who gives me the kick up the arse when I'm like, geez, man, I don't think I can do this. And so he's been a massive, massive support for me for doing it. And I like to think I'm likewise as well for him.
Amazing. Oh, that's really good to hear. And I can imagine how hard it is when your other part of the family is also creative and works in design. There is never a break. But as you said, it's just having someone who understands. And I think for some people, luckily for you, it's your husband. For some people, it could be a friend or a sibling. Yeah. How amazing it is to have someone who supports you no matter what type of job you do, just having that one person in your life that makes all the difference. Sometimes it can't be, unfortunately, family. Sometimes you have to find them outside of your family.
But just having someone close who understands especially when you've had a tough day or you've got a tough client or you've hit a brick wall, and just having someone else who you can talk to who's kind of been through that. It's so important. And they don't have to be a graphic designer, just another creative who kind of understands that that you need to let off steam in different ways. You need to bounce ideas off somebody. So I recommend that everybody kind of finds at least one person that they know that they can call up and be like, oh man, I just need to bounce an idea. Is this really shit or good, or can you just give me a bit of advice?
That's brilliant. And especially now, I think having that circle of friends or colleagues that can, even if you're a freelancer, having another freelancer that does the same job, that's always good. We have lots of comments around dyslexia and wonderful stories about people achieving great things and doing fantastic things with dyslexia. And I can only say that this is great to hear, but also I would want everyone to know that dyslexia does not stop anyone from, it is harder, but Emma is a great example of achieving everything you want. And I've heard horrible stories about teachers saying horrible things to kids with dyslexia during school times. Please disregard them. There are many, many, many brilliant people with dyslexia who are doing great things. So just keep going. And it's great to hear there are already so many great examples. There are lots of questions about motivation. Claudia Rivera asks, how do you keep the team motivated, as well as how do you motivate yourself?
If I'm being honest, I don't have to motivate the team because they are a real ambitious bunch. We kind of deliberately hire people who are kind of self-motivators. and kind of high achievers. So I don't really have to work hard at doing that. If anything, they probably motivate me. And again, I know that sounds like super cheesy, but it's true. They're always kind of finding new inspiration in kind of places that I wouldn't look at. Like one of the designers on the Monday morning meeting kind of shared some I think it was some postmodernism kind of inspiration he was talking about, and it was absolutely bonkers, but kind of also relevant for the times that we're in today. And I kind of went away and I said, oh God, I'm going to kind of have to look into that. So I'm motivated by my team. Like, and I mean that in the non-cheesiest way. In kind of in what they do, in the things that the inspiration that they find, and the things that they do, and the things that they talk about. I wouldn't do it. I kind of wouldn't. I would just be like, well, I'll go off and just work for myself in my bedroom as a bedroom designer. So no, motivated by my team and my clients as well. Actually, just on that, like some of our clients are incredibly ambitious, and to the point where sometimes they kind of put me like out of my comfort zone. And I kind of find that motivating because I kind of, they're challenging me to kind of learn new things and do better. So mixture of both.
That's a great answer. I wonder, obviously, you make it sound very easy that you don't need to motivate them, but I have a feeling that there is a secret sauce somewhere there at Wolff Olins that keeps people motivated. Are there any, I suppose, rituals? I love how you talk about the fact that you congratulate yourself on kind of any sort of achievement. What are those principles that kind of in general keep people inspired, even if the work is tough and even if it's challenging?
So it's just actually on that motivation point, I think probably what helps motivate them as well, and I think about it, is when we talk about the design community meetings that we have. So we have these kind of every week. And I think that they're kind of, everybody's motivated about doing the best work. And because we share our work in this kind of forum, and everybody knows that they're at Wolff Olins because they're kind of top of the game. And so everybody's kind of motivated to do better because they're kind of sharing each other's word. And I kind of think that kind of fuels itself almost. And that's probably why I don't need to motivation, because that platform is motivation for them. And then we also kind of have we're quite open about kind of sharing our work outside of the design community as well. And I guess when you're sharing your work in front of the wider company, you're kind of motivated to make sure it looks good and hangs together well. So
yeah, I mean, definitely a good practice, a bit of competition and a bit of I suppose celebration. That's what fuels a lot of people. So I think definitely sharing work and talking about work.
And I think for any creative as well, you're kind of motivated. You kind of want to please your peers. So the kind of people you work alongside, you want to please other designers. You want other designers to kind of deep down think, oh, that was really cool. I wish I had kind of done that. So I kind of think that's where it comes from as well. At least I do and did anyway.
Yeah, definitely. I had a theory that you need three people in your life: that someone who annoys you, someone who inspires you, and someone who supports you. Yeah. So I suppose that annoying piece is that other designer who did something better than you, that what fuels you. Yeah, and then someone who you want to be, essentially, that's someone who inspires you.
Absolutely.
I want to finish with some advice for everyone listening, that hopefully will be helpful for anyone who potentially will be the next creative director at Wolff Olins somewhere in the world, or runs their own company and has to look after people, teams, and inspire them, lead them. If you could give yourself an advice, let's say 5 years ago, that would, obviously we'll make mistakes, so there is nothing bad and you learn from that, but that would help you either to avoid some of those mistakes, or maybe save your resources, whether it's time resources or stress resources, and get to the point where you are a bit quicker and a bit less painful. What advice would you give yourself?
This is an easy one. Pick your battles. I'm a natural fighter. I'm always kind of armored up to defend my work or to defend myself. But I wish I kind of learned when I was younger, it was kind of wasted energy and wasted stress. And the people around me were kind of wanting to do the same things and wanting to reach the same goals. They were just kind of going about them in different ways. And I kind of felt like I had to fight for everything, fight for my logo, go fight for my voice to be heard. And you don't have to fight for everything, fight for the big things that matter and let the little things go. It's probably the best advice. I mean, I even do it now. I kind of find myself kind of falling into like, I need to fight for my team. I need to, fight for our reputation. And it's just like, no, I don't. I don't need to do that. Just kind of let the little things go, because there are people who are doing that for you.
That is a great advice. And I think there was some recent advice from Tim Ferriss about letting the small fires burn, and kind of that feeling that you actually need to keep your own sanity is a very, very, very good approach.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Emma. It was so lovely talking to you, and the time flies very, very fast. Thanks everyone for joining us today. And if you're not following Wolff Olins somehow, please follow them everywhere on Instagram, on LinkedIn.